When I first set foot in Night City, I knew almost instantly that Cyberpunk 2077 and the stories it sought to tell were going to change me. But while navigating its world for the first time, I felt myself overcome with this heavy, debilitating feeling, one that I would later go on to identify as dysphoria. Even so, it would be another year, maybe more, until I was forced to reckon with my own transness. When I started the game for the second time, now on a female character, I knew instantly that Cyberpunk 2077 and the stories it had to tell were going to change me in a way that no other game had the capacity to. Sure, I felt the anxiety of navigating V through the city's cybernetic corporatocracy, but I also felt the freedom of racing through its streets on two wheels. I felt the thrill of slicing my foes to ribbon in a hail of bullets and a flurry of blades, overcoming near impossible obstacles with careful planning and brute force. I was enthralled. But when I finally looked up at the absurd hour and I begrudgingly made my way to sleep, it wasn't the bombastic violence, the thrill of the escape, or the immense power I wielded that kept me up thinking about it. It was a 5-minute introductory conversation with a woman named Judy, one that seemed to glisten with hope and desire. Before we get back to Cyberpunk the game, though, I need to touch briefly on Cyberpunk the genre. The term refers to a style of science fiction that centers on the grit and grime of near-future Earths. Authors like William Gibson, who defined the genre with his novel Neuromancer, and directors like Ridley Scott, who popularized it through his film Blade Runner, traded out the high fantasy inspiration and epic storytelling of properties like Star Wars, to instead deal with the realities of life under brutal, high-tech corporate governments. Often boiled down to the phrase high-tech, low-life, cyberpunk stories question our ideals of free will, personhood, and the unstoppable march of technology. One common cyberpunk trope pits machine humans, like soldiers or cops, against human machines, like Blade Runner's replicants. They force us to ask ourselves where humanity begins and ends, and also pose the question of who gets to draw that line and what stake they have in drawing it. Perhaps most importantly, though, cyberpunk futures are relentlessly bleak. Their deep blacks and dark shadows are what allow their neon signs and bright lights to really shine through, just as their oppressive narratives amplify the resilience and hope their stories seek to highlight. It's really no coincidence that the Wachowski sisters, directors of 1999's The Matrix, are so important to the cyberpunk canon. The Matrix is a film about choosing to suffer for a hopeful future over the confined comfort of living in a lie. It's explicitly, textually about transness and the experience of being trans, and also perhaps the most famous piece of cyberpunk fiction in existence. It's the source of numerous memes and sayings, several of which actually appear in Cyberpunk 2077, redefined action filmmaking as we know it, and helped the Wachowski sisters solidify what cultural theorist Cael M. Keegan calls an explicitly trans cinematic aesthetic. This framework is born from his analysis of the Wachowski sisters' 1996 thriller Bound and the clandestine lesbian relationship at its center. The film follows Violet and Corky, the wife of a mob boss and the technician that works in her apartment complex, who are forced to explore their love through a covert language of desire. Their love gives them hope, and their hope leads them to alter the course of their lives in order to achieve a new future far away from the oppressive structures they leave behind. Everything from Bound's subversive cinematography to its claustrophobic set design seeks to emphasize the transgressive and transformative nature of their relationship, and from it, Keegan brings out an understanding of the themes central to the trans cinematic aesthetic. The trans aesthetic is one that attempts to externalize feelings of gender and desire through shared modes of understanding, that believes reality is not only malleable but should be changed, and that is relentless in its hopeful imagination of the future. Through this framework, I've come to understand that Cyberpunk 2077 transed my gender, as ridiculous as that sounds. And in this video, I want to explore exactly why a video game romance resonated with me deeply enough to make a closeted teenage girl cry the first tears she'd cried in years.
So, you're saying you saved my life. Thank you.
Despite what people online may tell you, Cyberpunk 2077's prologue is actually a fucking blast. In it, V is tasked with securing gear and gathering information in preparation for the heist of the century, a task that comes with extensive prep work. Part of this setup includes a stellar, if underappreciated, mission called the Information. The Information is sort of the standard boring part of any good heist setup. You're told that Evelyn Parker, your informant, has crucial information for you in the form of a brain dance. Brain dances, often just shortened to BDs, function like a sort of full-body, whole-brain VR walkthrough that allow you to scroll through and isolate sensory information that the brain might not pick up on its own. That being said, neither you nor Evelyn are any good at sifting through all the dense information contained within your average brain dance. And braindance editor extraordinaire Judy Alvarez is really not the trusting type. Your interaction with Judy is, at first glance, purely a vehicle to begin understanding brain dances. They're incredibly important to the game's world, and you also have to dive into a few of them over the course of the game if you intend to complete it. But aside from helping you relocate Evelyn in the aftermath of the heist, her relevance to the game can potentially begin and end right here. Sticking by her never felt like a choice to me, though. And for the longest time, I really had no idea why. My original male V tried something like, nice setup you got there, and it did not go over well. By contrast, my female V was already a tech wizard, and she took a second to study the expanse of customized hardware around her and engage Judy in an in-depth conversation about it.
Sensory sig amps, acoustic and emotive wave monitors. Oh, top shelf hardware.
Yeah, most of it's customized. Only thing factory are the casings.
Mod all this yourself?
What do you think?
Expression translator. Fuyutsuki, right? Thought the matrices on that series were fucked up.
They were, but swapping out matrices is simple. And this was the only model that'd support additional scanware. Alright.
Notable among all this insane technobabble is mention of a Fuyutsuki expression translator, something Judy draws attention to because she had to swap out the matrices in order for it to work properly. In this entire conversation, this is actually the only dialogue option that really allows you to start to bond with Judy, and the fact that you're required to spec into the tech skill, her area of expertise, makes this feel all the more intentional. Most gamers can play for hours before they realize that Judy's a lesbian, but in retrospect, I realized it right here. Outwardly, Judy ranting about her interests is really nothing special for your archetypal techie, but if we take it with the rest of what we see of her character, this becomes a deeply revealing moment. First and foremost, like everything else, lesbianism is most often understood through the lens of heteronormativity, in which they're expected to align themselves with masculinity. Tropes like short hair, baggy clothes, or masculine pursuits like sports and manual labor are often employed as shorthand for interest in other women. Judy's hair might be colorful and long, but the side shave, her utilitarian work clothes, and her gruff attitude serve as enough overt coding for even the straightest of gamers to pick up on in time. Additionally, we're shown throughout the game through the prevalence of male technicians that the archetypal techie is still understood as a primarily masculine position. When Judy opens up about her hardware, though, she invites V to see her passion in a way that only the two of them pick up on. The two share intimate knowledge of a subject that to the world is opaque and unknowable, and the fluidity of this exchange reveals just how deep an understanding the two share. Their instantaneous connection and the later progression of their relationship makes this pretty clear on its own, but there are a few details that support this reading in a much subtler way. The first bit of evidence for reading Judy and V's romance as trans is hidden in the visual language of the scene. It's important to note that Judy's a BD editor that specializes in porn, and while it's made clear she doesn't resent the work and has love for the people she works with, it's also clear that her passion lies elsewhere. Gender and sexuality in Night City are shown to be pretty fluid, but it's clear from the way that its red light district operates that porn and sex work are still largely a heteronormative and very exploitative industry. For Judy, porn is only an avenue to hone her skills and make some money, but it's not the language of expression that she prefers. We find Judy shrouded in shadow, presumably working on one such porno, a task that is clearly not particularly joyous. It isn't until V enters the room that she makes the move over to her computer, and she seems much more comfortable once she realizes V isn't there about porn. We watch Judy move from this dark corner, representing the alien, impersonal, and heteronormative language of porn, to sitting in this bath of neon, representing the truer, freer, and more vibrant language of feeling as art and information. The game's use of light to signify her attitudes shows us that for Judy there's really no desire in porn, but there is desire in the intimacy of amplifying and tuning feelings. It's in this scene that she and V begin to share in this desire. Later in the game, it's this type of intimacy that they choose as the mode through which they explore their romance. But trust me, there is so much technobabble to get through before we get to that. While we never learn exactly what an expression translator matrix is, it definitely is far from meaningless technobabble. A matrix refers to the medium, structure, or environment in which something operates. For example, in sociology, a matrix of oppression refers to the different types of oppression that interlock and form a structure by which marginalized people are oppressed. Therefore, in the literal sense, an expression translator matrix would refer to the framework by which one expresses themselves and makes that expression understandable. In this scene, with this specific dialogue choice, Judy and V share a language of expression, that of the brain dance, that is generally inaccessible to those around them. With this understanding, there is a lot more to be gleaned from this conversation.
Thought the matrices on that series were fucked up.
They were, but swapping out matrices is simple.
V bringing up the fucked up matrices, then, can be understood as her subtly pointing to blind spots within a heteronormative matrix of expression. She's familiar with the default and understands that it doesn't work for her or for others like her. Judy's response then becomes an affirmation of the shared and distinctly different expression matrix that the two women are now attuned to. In this reading, this technobabble exchange becomes both an excited infodump and an invitation to understand one another and to know each other's desire through discrete forms of connection. The conversation feels as though it pushes and pulls with the rhythm of moving bodies, as Judy and V finish each other's sentences and admire each other's knowledge. Within seconds, the two women go from sounding like complete strangers to sounding like hopeful lovers, inspired by their shared, secret desire for one another. Judy and V don't promise each other a future, at least not here. But here, they silently agree to hope for one. Playing it again, the scene carries with it a warmth and excitement that I've begun to know quite intimately since understanding my own identity as a lesbian. Their conversation also reminds me of the way that other trans women and I approach each other in public, trying to deduce our shared in-group status without outing each other by using subtle touchpoints like video games, musical artists, or movies to gesture at a trans matrix of expression. In the same way, Judy and V point to their matrix of expression by using touchpoints like specific pieces of hardware. This entire scene is a consistently poignant moment in a game jam-packed with moving set pieces, and it sets up the motif of knowing through technology in a pretty impressive and subtle way, one that hints at the dynamic that Judy and V will share throughout the game, and injects just a little bit of hope into the story right before things come crashing down around V. The heist, to absolutely no one's surprise, goes horribly wrong, causing V to wind up in a ditch with both the biochip and a bullet lodged in her brain.
You weren't dreaming, V. Those were memories. There's a personality construct on that shard. Dreams you had were from his past. Silverhand's construct is overriding your consciousness, gradually taking over your body until one day you'll just be gone.
As the upload progresses, V's condition deteriorates rapidly, and you're forced to seek help anywhere you can find it. Amidst all the chaos, though, Judy will reach out and ask you for help deposing a gang. Should you succeed in this task, and crucially decline her offer for payment, you'll receive a kiss on the cheek, and later she'll ask you out on a date.
What's up?
You're on a need-to-know basis. So, this particular mission don't require you to have no gun, just a wetsuit.
All right then, count me in.
Of course, it's not just diving. Judy does want your help testing a brand new braindance recording implant.
How does one marry two separate neural tracks?
Well, at first I tried to create a single profile out of 2 data streams. Didn't turn out so great.
Must have gotten tangled up. Interference, white noise.
Yeah, effect was kinda like a bad art house. Couple tries in, though, I managed to isolate specific sensations.
So you load them onto separate neural tracks. No emo bogies. Not bad.
To do so, she brings you to the bottom of a man-made lake that rests atop the now sunken town of Laguna Bend, starting my favorite quest in all of gaming, Pyramid Song. With your senses linked, Judy guides you through the sunken ruins, pausing every once in a while so that you can stop and look for objects that might spark her memory. All the while, the darkness swirling around you threatens to swallow you whole should you stray from the path. As you swim, Judy tells you the story of her childhood. She grew up there in Laguna Bend with her grandmother, and experienced a seemingly normal childhood. Eventually, though, the unstoppable march of corporations caught up with that town just as it had so many before, and its residents were forcibly evacuated so that the town could be dammed and flooded in order to create Night City's reservoir. Her tone betrays the bittersweet nature of these memories. It's painful, sure, but it's also clear that coming here, seeing everything succumbed to and preserved by the water, is a healing and deeply hopeful experience for Judy. One of my absolute favorite things about this scene are how its narrative, aesthetics, and gameplay coalesce to convey its unshakable hopefulness. Objects of interest are highlighted in a yellow glow, meant to guide players throughout the level, but that contrast sharply with your surroundings and create these little pockets of light. Interacting with them will prompt Judy to tell a little anecdote about each object. Through the braindance recorder, these anecdotes are accompanied by floods of nostalgic sensory memory.
Sorry, gotta go. They're calling.
This brings the discussion of expression matrices full circle. Whereas once they merely represented Judy and V's shared understanding, Judy's invention links them together in a much more tangible sort of way. Before, Judy's invitation was to know her for the truth of who she is by subtly externalizing the truth of her desire. But here, alone with V, she's able to make herself known overtly, an act only possible because she and V share an understanding of how the other wants to be understood. When Judy tells V she's the person that she's been waiting for, it's because V is the first person to truly open herself up to Judy's desire in the way that she needs, and Judy linking them through sensation is an affirmation that they are operating within the same matrix of understanding. Through these means, Pyramid Song becomes a story about two lovers using their shared language of expression to create hope in that utter darkness, and imagining a future for themselves by understanding both the joy and the suffering of the past. This peaceful scene ends when a biochip seizure knocks V unconscious. You awake on the dock and enter the cabin to find Judy sobbing on the floor of the bathroom.
You thinking about Evelyn?
Clouds has gone to shit. Tiger Claw No Necks took revenge for Hiromi and the rest. There was a firefight. Tom's dead. Roxanne barely got out alive. House is closed until further notice.
In these scenes, the shack, like the highlighted memory objects, becomes a direct metaphor for carving out hope in darkness. Outside, you and Judy are constantly pulled from one tragedy to the next, and here in this scene, tragedy threatens to invade even this, their most remote sanctuary. That is, until V returns inside to hold her lover close.
I want it.
It is ours.
right now, even in this pit of despair, she's the only thing that matters to Judy. The scene that follows is, in contrast with the legacy of video game sex scenes, tender and heartfelt. The scene as a whole isn't so interested in the act of sex as it is the sharing of touch and desire and the exchange of pleasure. Judy and V's desire has been expressed through covert means, externalized through a link between one another's minds, and now, finally, they're able to act on it. This encounter, like their conversation in the information, is a promise of hope. But unlike that conversation, it's an act of hope as well.
Ruined my plans, you know that? Was gonna leave Night City in the dust for good. Even started packing. But now I think I gotta stay.
In choosing to share her passion, her body, and her vulnerability with V, she is also choosing to stick around for the hope that together they might be able to imagine a future that is better and brighter than they ever could have imagined without one another. Like any good lesbian, the first thing she does is give you a virtual key to her house, and the two of you part ways for now, determined to finish your business and leave Night City for good together. The way that Judy and V interact, especially in Pyramid Song, reminds me of the future hope that I and other trans people come to share. For one example, my girlfriend and I often talk about our future hopes with one another. Sometimes it's something as complicated as, I can't wait to go and get a surgery referral when I see my doctor, knowing full well that that is probably years off. Sometimes it's as simple as, we're going to get out of here together. All too often, we get by only on the knowledge that things will change over time if we make them. That if we refuse to give up hope, we can change our own realities. The two characters may be canonically cis in Judy's case, and canonically not really gendered at all in V's, but the fact that their relationship manages to be so poignant through its messages of hope and change alone reaffirms my belief that their story is an intrinsically trans one, so much so that it not only parallels real-life relationships between trans people, but also the hopeful futures that we imagine for ourselves through those relationships. Judy and V embody the trans media aesthetic. Not only do they operate within a shared and often imperceptible language of understanding, not only do they share endless hope for the future, but they prove time and time again that they believe reality to be malleable. Devastatingly though, the joy you share doesn't last. It never could. This is the wrong city and you are the wrong people. You're given one final, fatal prognosis.
After I transfer your construct into your body, you will die. It is inevitable. It is imminent. You shall live for about 6 months, perhaps somewhat more.
No.
It's fucking heartbreaking listening to the greatest mercenary Night City has ever known scream, cry, and plead for anything to let her spend more time with her loved ones. At this point, first-time players are likely to be greeted with one of 3 outcomes. In all of these endings, you and Judy are forced apart, but these outcomes, like everything else in Night City, can be made to change. In the process of trying to understand the biochip, V will become close with a clan of nomads called the Aldecaldos, led by the fearsome Saul Bright and his fearless chosen daughter, Panam Palmer. You're there for them at the time of their greatest need, and Panam assures you that when the time comes, they'll have your back just the same. This is no empty promise. As you sit and weigh the decision of which one of your friends you're going to ask to die so that you can live, the mighty Aldecaldos stand ready and eager to lay their lives down for your survival and a better future for the clan. You come out the other side with a battered Panam, brandishing 6 more months of life and a fresh start for the Aldecaldos. Sometime later, the Aldecaldos are gathered waiting for you in Pan Am. As V climbs into her car, she takes her last look at Night City and settles in for the long drive. But there's one more stop on your journey. Waiting next to the massive caravan is Judy Alvarez, bathed in the warm glow of evening, with her bags packed and her eyes on the horizon. Even knowing that you'll likely die within the next 6 months, Judy is absolutely ecstatic to spend whatever time you have left loving you and building a future together. Over the course of their romance, we've seen how V and Judy's relationship exemplifies the externalizing of desire through covert means, a commitment to a hopeful future imaginary, and the belief that through action they can shape theirs however they see fit. The constant struggle between light and shadow comes full circle as the lovers cruise off into the sunset. The game's developers could very well have made this yet another crushing downer in a franchise that is filled with literally nothing but crushing downers. CD Projekt Red have proven time and time again that they are under no obligation to spare anyone. By contrast, the deliberate choice to give V and Judy even just one outcome where they can hold on to hope affirms in no uncertain terms that the game itself believes in this distinctly trans way of living and loving. Every time I play Cyberpunk 2077, whether alone or with a loved one, it's an unfathomably moving experience. But while writing this, challenging myself to think critically about its narratives and the things that they have to say, I've uncovered so much more to love. Each scene is packed with detail and lovingly crafted to convey a wealth of deeply ingrained subtext. And I feel genuinely privileged that I get to experience this game and all it has to offer as a trans woman. If you ask it the right questions, Night City will assure you that trans people have a place in its future. Our cybernetic augmentations and gender-affirming care are given the same weight as cis people's. Our bodies are exploited for advertising just the same as theirs, and every trans person you meet in-game is just as miserable as everybody else. What it will mutter under its breath, though, is that our ways of living, of loving, are uniquely suited to ripping and tearing ourselves a path to hope.
We'll have a home. We'll be home soon.
It's a vision I like. A lot.
Me too. We're gonna be all right. If I can be sure of anything now, it's that.
Feel better already?